person beside you.
This would be the final forum for tonight, and this one would be the Kankakee County Treasurer with Mr. Nick Africano and Mr. Ray Chamberlain. Again, Mr. Steve Bertrand and his staff from the Kankakee Library. Our timer again is Paulette Crank, Mr. Jim Simone, Hispanic Partnership, Ms. Alicia Rabidou, Political Action NAACP member, and Mr. Mike Fry. And again, to our two candidates who've taken time out of their busy schedule. And there was a coin toss. Mr. Chamberlain will be doing the closing statement, and we'll be opening with Mr. Nick Africano. Each individual will get questions, answer 1 minute, and 2 to 3 minutes based on our time for the closing statement. And we're going to start with Ms. Rabidou for the first question, and the question is to Mr. Africano.
Hello, sir.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you? Thank you. Why do you want to be the Kankakee County Treasurer?
Well, I stood here. Actually, I think I stood last time, but my height probably can't tell if I'm standing or sitting, actually. I was here 2 years ago, and I talked about what my plans were. And I said I wanted to be treasurer to accomplish certain goals. And when I didn't think there was anything left to do in the office, I would move on. That I only really wanted to be a great treasurer and serve the citizens of this county well. I had a short term, which was 2 years because of a unexpired, Mark Frechette had an unexpired term. Nick Allen then had to run right away. I defeated him and then had to fill out the 2 years. So I feel like we've accomplished a lot. I came here, I said I would do certain things. I said I would, as you know, maybe, the office was closed on Thursdays and during lunch hour. And I said right away that that was unacceptable, and I would change that. I took office December 1st, and I believe March 1st that was changed. I said I would open the drive-through at the bank where the treasurer's office was located. I was unable to do that because of structural problems in the underground portion, but I worked with County Board Chairman Andy Wheeler, and we moved the office to the first floor of the county building, getting rid of that old building and saving money. Time is being shown to me. I will talk about further what we've done. I want to be treasurer because there's more to be done, and I can't wait to do it. Oh, I'm sorry, there's 30 seconds more. So there are other things that we can look at. Taxes are very high. I don't set tax rates, but I certainly can run my office more, we can all run our offices more efficiently. So that's the way I can contribute to lowering taxes. Perhaps we can talk about chunking payments. Instead of 2 installments, maybe 6 installments. There are a lot of things that I would like to look at over the next 4 years to make the office more convenient for the taxpayers. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, I want to be Kankakee County Treasurer simply for the 80 people last year that got their name by our current treasurer in the paper and told that they were tax delinquent. And then 9 days later, he put another ad in the paper with the same names and same PIN numbers and said, gee, I said you were tax delinquent and I'm sorry. I think, again, when you have that kind of information at your fingertips, that you really shouldn't make those kind of mistakes. Why do I want to be Kankakee County Treasurer? Boy, that's a great question. That's not just a good question. That's a great question. I want to be Kankakee County Treasurer because I believe in public service. I believe that public service is the highest form of appreciation. I have heard in the debates, I have heard, from various folks say their, family has been in Kankakee County for 20 years or since 1903, and I mean, that's great. That's a wonderful thing. But that longevity in the county, while a wonderful thing, does not necessarily make that person, him or her, the best candidate for Kankakee County Treasurer. I think that I want to be treasurer to help the people of Kankakee County maintain that status of home ownership. I think that we can do that. I think we can work with the county board, and we can get tax increment payments from 2 to get them to maybe 4, get them maybe 6 payments a year. What is it that will make your life easier. That is something that I think we should hear from the people of the county.
I think I was in haste, Mr. Africano and Mr. Chamberlain. Unless you want to add that question to your opening statement, we'll go back to you as an opening statement and also to you, Mr. Chamberlain, even though with Mr. Rabidou question.
Thanks. I'm really happy that Mr. Chamberlain raised the idea of tax delinquencies and me accidentally publishing people's names in the paper. I'm glad he mentioned that at the outset. I know that's what he sort of hung his hat on in this race. Let me explain to you what happened. A bank in town who takes payments sent payments to us a month late, right? But the buck stops with me. So I didn't name that bank, and I won't name that bank today because they do a lot of work for us. But I took the blame for it, and I published in the paper those names and said that I was sorry that those people weren't in fact late. Unlike my predecessors who not only published non-delinquent names and didn't rectify it, they sold properties that weren't delinquent and didn't rectify it. So Mr. Chamberlain hangs his hat on 88 properties, but he's just ill-informed, like most things he talks about. My family has been here 100 years. It does matter. He's been here 12 years. Look at the money. Go on the website. Look at where his money comes from. Look at where my campaign financing comes from. You'll see Chicago law firms, Madigan types, where he's funded. You'll see Kankakee people where I'm funded. Okay? You'll see small donations, not law firms on LaSalle Street in Chicago that represent his union. And for payments, it's a great idea, and I'm glad Mr. Chamberlain brings it up because presently we have 4 payments right now. Sorry he doesn't understand that, but we have 4 payments right now. There's 2 primary payments. You want to make it a 4-payment plan, it's available to you today. I'm looking at 6 payments. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, he says that he accepts 4 payments now, which is a great thing because I believe it was less than 6 months ago when his website said it was against the law to do that. Now, Mr. Africano informed me at our last debate that he had a letter signed by our state's attorney, Jim Rowe, on what could be done and what couldn't be done as far as tax extension. I'd never received a copy of that letter, but one thing that Mr. Africano mentioned is my campaign contributors. For the last 24 years, I've been a member in good standing of Millwright Local 1693. I am a member of the United Brotherhood of Carpenters and Joiners of America. There are 37 local unions in the Carpenters Union out of Chicago. Did those people contribute to my campaign? Yes. Am I ashamed that they contributed to my campaign? No. I'm proud of the fact that I'm a union member. I'm proud of the fact that I've gained the experience over the last 15 years of working with people, dealing with people, working hand in hand with the treasurer in my local union for the last 15 years to watch our treasury go from $30,000 to currently $350,000. Now, those numbers are much smaller than what Kankakee County Treasurer's office deals with, but again, I think that what Mr. Africano did with opening the office on Thursday, that's great. You're in a building that's open Monday through Friday. You should be there Monday through Friday. You are paid as the Kankakee County Treasurer. It should be a 40-hour office. And if you need a half a day on Saturday or if you need a half a day on Sunday, I think to accommodate the needs of the people of Kankakee County, that's something that we have to consider.
Mr. Simone, you have the question, and the question is to Mr. Chamberlain.
Okay. Good evening. Old eyes. How do you think the senior tax payment extension being repealed, how do you think that affected the county? Or do you think it affected the county in any way? And do you think it's something that should be reinstated?
Well, I think it's something that I would like to see reinstated. I think for senior citizens in the county that are on a fixed income may have trouble making that payment. I know as a homeowner, I know what my property taxes are, and I know that they're escrowed, and I know that I pay it 2 times a year. Now, if I was retired and I owned that home and had to pay that in 2 increments, that might be difficult to do because of my limited income. So I think it would be beneficial to offer 4 payments or to offer 6 payments.
Mr. Africano?
Well, as I said before, we do offer 4 payments. It's available today. I don't know what he read on the website, but it is available, has been available since I started, and we are researching 6 payments. In terms of the seniors exemption, as a new treasurer, the first thing I wanted to do was be compliant with the law. So I asked the state's attorney for an opinion as to where that legal authority came from. I didn't ask Jim Rowe, I asked his office, of course. And I received a letter back, which I have right here, that says that we can, with special provisions in terms of billing, extend senior citizens' taxes. My problem with that is, what about single women, single mothers? What about, whoever? The answer I got was too late. Should it be done again? I'm not certain. It was done because checks were given at the beginning of the month, and now Social Security goes throughout the month. That was the genesis of it.
Thank you. Mr. Fryer, you have the questions to Mr. Africano.
In our previous debate, the office holder said no 2 days are alike in his office. I don't imagine it's the same for the treasurer's office either. Mr. Africano, what type of time do you put in there? What's your work schedule look like? Is it a 40-hour plus week? And then by like token, Mr. Chamberlain, what type of time do you plan to put toward a job? Sorry about that.
Well, I assume that Mr. Chamberlain, being in management in the union, has similar issues that I have, which are it's absolutely a 40-plus hour week. During tax time, it's beyond 50 hours. The way the office ebbs and flows, and I have great staff. Diane Chamberlain is here. Shakira Banks is here. I don't know if Donna Casino is here. They put in an inordinate amount of work, and I stay and work as long as needed. I know this is something that's been brought up often. It's a red herring. That office is absolutely a plus 40-hour week job. And if it's plus 60 hours, that's what it takes. And I plan on continuing to succeed in the office as I've done in the first 2 years.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, I would, for the last for my working life, I've always worked 40 hours a week. That's currently what I work right now. Whatever the office needed for hours is what I would be willing to put in. As a business representative for the Carpenters Union, the one thing I tell my members, I tell my contractors, and anybody that calls me, I will tell you that my phone is always on and I'm not smart enough to shut it off. If I need to go to work, that's what I do. I go to work.
Ms. Rabidou, you have a question and questions to Mr. Chamberlain.
Sir, what are your qualifications and or personal attributes that will help you serve as the treasurer?
I think my personal attribute that would help me in this office would be a good ability to work with others. I think you've got to have well-rounded skills because I think as the treasurer of the county, you have to be able to work with the county clerk, you have to be able to work with the assessor, you have to be able to work with just about everybody in the county, including the county board, that really controls the finances of the county. I think what I best bring to the table is that ability to work within people. I've been treasurer of the Mantino Education Foundation for the last 2 years, and like I say, I assist the treasurer of my local union, not in the kind of numbers that the county office sees, though.
Mr. Africano.
Well, I think anybody who knows me in this county knows one thing about me is I absolutely get along with other people and work well with others. Like I said, working with the chairman of the county, Andy Wheeler, who's here this evening, we worked together to make sure that the office got moved to a more efficient area. I work between the assessor and I work between the county clerk. I have a fabulous working relationship with them, with the auditor, with the county board members. I don't work for the county board, I work for the citizens, but I think it's important to have a relationship with the county board that's positive. And I think that all the things that I've accomplished in the 2 years speak to the ability to work across, party lines or across offices.
Mr. Simone, question, and the question is to Mr. Africano.
What do you believe is the most significant factor that has contributed to the county's current financial crisis, and how would you address that?
Well, I think clearly we had a spending problem, not a revenue problem. I'm sure if you look at your tax bill, you probably don't think we have a revenue problem. So I think that we need to cut costs. I think that the county board has endeavored to work tirelessly to squeeze expenses. We have, I believe, a $3 million surplus at the end of this year coming up. We're chipping away at long-term debt. So what can I do? I can run my office more efficiently. I can open on Thursdays and give the citizens 30% more service without one extra penny. Mr. Chamberlain was silent on that issue when it was closed since 2013. He never said a word. Now he thinks it's a great idea. It's an idea I came up with and implemented. So that's how you can do it. You can be more efficient in my office, and you can work with the county board to restrain spending.
Mr. Chamberlain.
In 2013, I wasn't running for county treasurer. But I think that, what Mr. Africano said, again, he's in a building, he's in the county building. The county building is open from Monday to Friday. Treasurer's office should be open from Monday to Friday. I just believe it's that simple. I don't think that, while it was closed on Thursday, is that policy? Maybe. But I think that the people of Kankakee County, if they have questions, comments, or concerns with the treasurer's office, that they should have that ability to visit the treasurer's office and actually speak to the treasurer Monday through Friday.
Mr. Chamberlain, should the county treasurer office handle oversight of county investments? Investments.
I think they should have oversight over county investments. I believe that Mr. Africano does have oversight over county investments.
I just want to get back, since I'll take my full 1 minute here. I just want to say that there was an ordinance that needed to be passed to open the office on Thursdays. And there was about 5 votes against that ordinance. And they were by the Democratic side, okay? So, again, I know it sounds easy, but I made it happen. No one before made it happen. In terms of investments, I by law, am the investment person in the county. And last forum, 2 weeks ago, Mr. Chamberlain said if he raised $300,000, he didn't believe that we had raised $300,000 over the last 2 years in investments. If he were me, he would shout it from the mountaintop. So I just want to say right here are the bank statements, and I'm going to shout it from the mountaintop, and I share them with everybody after this meeting. We're at about 248, and we have 3 months to go. We're going to be over 300,000.
Mr. Abadou, you have the question. The questions to Mr. Africano.
What are the major professional accomplishments and your major professional accomplishments and your major personal accomplishments?
Well, that's a good question. I'd say I'll take personal first. I'd say as a father of 4. I have 4 children right now who are all in college, so I need this job. No. So I'd say that's probably, I have 5 of my 7 siblings here tonight. I'd say that's a personal accomplishment. My mother and father here supporting their son. That's a personal accomplishment. Professionally, I've done a lot of different things in my life. I've worked in the private sector, and I think probably in this job, what I'm most excited about is to bring the private sector concept to the public sector. So the idea of being closed on Thursday, right? That would be like going to McDonald's and they tell you they're closed because they're inventorying buns. I mean, it's ridiculous. So when you bring an outside private mindset, you can do a lot of different things. You can treat people with dignity. You can have good customer service, which is what we try to do on a daily basis. And I think we do a pretty darn good job.
Mr. Chamberlain.
an outside private mindset. That's exactly what I am. That's exactly what I am. I'm an outside guy. As Mr. Africano said, my family moved into Manteno in 2006. I've lived in Kankakee County for 12 years. This was a place that my wife and I wanted to move to as we grew older, because it's a beautiful place. I was born in the city of Chicago. I grew up in Palos Park. I grew up across the street from farmland. Today, I live across the street from farmland. I just like it. It's a beautiful community. It's a great place to live, and it's a very affordable place to live. I've always been interested in the political spectrum, and I've always been interested in public service. Again, I think that public service is one of the most honorable things that we can do as officials.
Mr. Simone, you have a question, and the question's to Mr. Chamberlain.
What changes do you expect to institute in the office over the next 4 years, if you're elected or reelected?
If I'm elected, I would like to add some information to Mr. Africano's website. I think there's not enough information there. And I think what I can bring is just a good public spirit to the office. I think that obviously in this county's been run by the Republican Party for a number of years. We have to be able to work across the aisle with one another, irregardless of our thoughts or views. Because at the end of the day, we're working for every one of you. We're working for everybody in Kankakee County.
Well, to your question, that's what excites me the most, I think, is what we can do. First of all, I think that the office has to be able to move, to pivot on a dime to do things when times change. So, for instance, when the Trump tax law changed in early December, we took prepayments to benefit people in this county to get their taxes paid early, because there would be a tax benefit. That had never done before. I'm not sure my staff was thrilled with me to do it, but it was the right thing to do. Going forward, 6-payment plan. I think that to be able to chunk your taxes out over 6 times will be helpful. Open Saturdays during tax time, something we're looking at. That's a union question. My people are laborers, members of laborers local, so that's a question for them. You'll be able to print your official bills off the internet next year for free. In addition, so you won't pay a duplicate bill fee. You'll be able to pay those at the banks. And we'll continue to explore money-saving opportunities.
Thank you. Mr. Frye, you have the question. The question's to Mr. Africano.
You mentioned the expanded hours, and it's fair to say that it makes payment of taxes more convenient in person. What's being done for those who prefer to do their business from their kitchen table, those who want to pay their taxes electronically, and how can that improve?
Well, we're looking at a new vendor, I think, for this year. That I think the vendor I took over, that was there when I took over, is maybe not the best. We instituted a new escrow payment service this year, which not only didn't cost the county money, I think we brought in about $23,000 in revenue. So we'd like to maybe work with this same company to go update our online payments. The problem with online payments, and one of the most difficult things, is from a credit card standpoint, there's a fee. And it's just a fee you can't get around. We can't absorb the fee. It's usually 2.3%. But I'd like to do maybe ACH, where the money comes out of your bank account automatically, bill paying. There's a lot of things that can be done. We continue to urge people to use drive-thrus at the bank. PNC is the only bank you can't use. I'm working to fix that, hopefully. But I think there are a lot of ways, and we need to continue to educate the public on how to use those other ways.
Mr. Chamberlain?
I think that there could be a consensus opinion. I would think that for tax payment, if you pay online, obviously it has to be very secure. You want to make sure that there's no data lost. I think that it's a great idea. I know that what Mr. Africano says is true, because in my local union, we accept payments by credit card, and you can do that. But, as Mr. Africano says, there is a fee for doing that. And depending on the number of people that do that, you either have to charge the taxpayer the fee or you have to pay the fee. And it's probably not cost effective for the county to pay the fee.
So I see we have questions from the audience, Ms. Rabideau, and the questions to Mr. Chamberlain. Or you can ask the question.
Okay. My question is, why should voters support you rather than your opponent?
Well, I think voters should support me rather than my opponent simply for the change that the county needs. The Republican Party in Kankakee County has been in power for a long, long time. And I think one thing that I would highlight with that statement is that when it comes to change, not a lot of people like that. Not a lot of people may like the idea that I've only been here for 12 years. Maybe they like the idea that Mr. Africano's family's been here for 100 years. But I understand all of that. But I think at the end of the day, what the people of Kankakee County need to remember is that 2 years ago or a few years back, you made a change at the Office of State's Attorney. And look at how happy everybody is with that change. I think the Treasurer's Office could use the same thing.
Mr. Africano?
I couldn't agree more with Mr. Chamberlain. I couldn't be happier with Jim Rowe as the state's attorney, and I'm very pleased. But what Mr. Chamberlain must not know, because he's only been here 12 years, is that this office was held by Democrats for 42 years when I took over. So the change happened 2 years ago. And that change greeted me with a $65,000 budget deficit, an understaffed office, no cross-training. I'm very, very happy that the people in this county got the change they were looking for. And I think I'm also very comfortable saying I don't think they want the change. I don't think the change they're looking for is to go back to where it was for 42 years in that office. So I agree with him about Jim Rowe. Just think he's misinformed on the Treasurer's Office.
Mr. Simone, you have the question. The question is to Mr. Africano.
Thank you. This is an audience question. Property addresses were removed from tax bills, making it difficult for owners of multiple properties. What is your stance on putting them back on the bills, and do you think that this affected property owners negatively?
Huge problem. Huge problem. We changed the tax bills this year. I'll tell you why we did it. We did it to save $0.015 per tax bill. Because instead of having my name printed on the envelope, which is the way I found the office, I'm still using Mark Frichette's checks, by the way. So, and I used up all Nick Allen's 3,000 envelopes that were left over. So instead of doing that, I changed the tax bill to save $0.015 by using a double window envelope. So we changed some formatting. We did take legal description, put legal description, took off address. Huge problem. People like Floyd Cole, who had several properties. We worked with anybody who needed it. I took those in-house and looked them up for several landlords, multiple property owners. They will absolutely be on the tax bill next year.
Mr. Chamberlain.
I would say that I would have to certainly agree with that, because I think that for multiple property owners, for tax purposes or for record-keeping purposes, they're going to need that property address on each bill that they receive.
Mr. Fryer, you have the question. The question to Mr. Chamberlain.
From the audience, what are or should be the positive assets of the Treasurer's Office?
Wow, that's a good question. I think the positive assets of the Treasurer's Office should be an uncanny ability to work with the public. I think that's what we're there for as a public servant, and we're here to answer your questions. We're here to work for you.
Mr. Africano.
Well, I just want to be sure we're talking about asset. We're not talking financial assets.
Assets, I think, is physical
Okay.
attributes, mental attributes.
I think probably is an attitude, a can-do attitude. to say, yeah, it's been done this way for 25 years, but it doesn't have to be. Let's rethink this. Let's do this a different way. Let's see what benefits the public. Let's open at lunchtime because, golly, gee whiz, people might want to pay their taxes during their lunch hour. I mean, that stuff like that doesn't take a whole lot of thought. But there are a lot of things that I think when you talk to people, you find out, if you interact with the public, you find out what they need. And I am in agreement with Mr. Chamberlain. I watch people pay their taxes and open up their coin purse and take out the last bit. Taxes are very, very high. I can't bring taxes down myself, but I certainly can make the experience not negative, is the least amount as negative as possible when you're giving the county your money, and to do that in a streamlined way.
Ms. Rabideau, you have the question and questions to Mr. Africano.
What changes do you expect to institute in the office over the next 4 years?
Well, I think I went through those before. I'll see if I remember all the ones we talked about. I'd like to see if we can't take. So my father would be against this idea because he would say if you owe $6,000, you save it up and you pay $3,000 and $3,000. I don't think for people today there are other ways to do that. Perhaps it's easier to pay $6,000 at 1,000 increments, right? So 6 times. So can we do that? Can we do an ACH checking, a debit right from your checking account, a bill pay, an automatic bill pay? Can we be open on on Saturdays? Would be a great idea, at least during tax time. Can we do a satellite office? That brings up some security issues. We'd probably have to work with the sheriff's office, but maybe we can take taxes in Manteno at the senior center one Saturday, or maybe at the Bourbonnais Senior Center one Saturday. There are a lot of things that we're looking at doing, mostly just streamlining and trying to pull off financial burdens. These nickel and dime charges, take those away from the people.
Mr. Chamberlain?
What changes do you expect to institute in the office over the next 4 years?
Well, I have to concur on the fact that I think for property owners in Kankakee County, we have to make it easy for everybody with a low income. I mean, it's been a senior citizen thing for years and years, but I think if we cross that bridge, that what we need to do is we need to do that for anybody that has a tax payment problem in Kankakee County. I think through the Treasurer's office, what we should be doing is working with you to see how to ease that burden on your property tax payments.
Mr. Simone, question to Mr. Chamberlain.
Thank you. Do you have any ideas on how to fix the county budget, how to address it, how to improve it, make it more viable?
I would have to honestly say Mr. Africano is probably going to have a better answer for this than I will because he has more information about the actual cash flow through the county. But I think that as the treasurer, we have to have hard discussions. Now, you heard Mr. Africano say that revenue wasn't an issue, that spending was. But many will remember not too far back, 5 to 7 years ago, Kankakee County lost a portion of the RTA tax. And when we lost that portion of the RTA tax, seemed to spiral us into this deficit that we're in now. And I think that's what really needs to be addressed.
Mr. Africano?
Well, when I ran 2 years ago, I said that I wanted to be intimately involved in the discussion of the county's financial operation, and I have been. I work closely with Andy Wheeler. I work closely with the Finance Committee. So what I've tried to do is help them with cash flow by getting them early distributions. I believe it was 2 weeks ago that we looked at our balance sheet, and my staff member came to me and said, hey, I'm going to pay this bill 4 days early because it's going to save $6,000 in interest. So I understand what it takes. My budget is $205,000 out of $193 million collected. So I don't have a big savings that I can find for the county. All I can tell you is I can be more streamlined and I can add my voice, and I think it's a voice of some experience to the discussion, and I'd like to believe that I've had a positive impact in the Finance Committee, and I would like to think that I'd get some credit for where we're at.
Mr. Africano, a question that we ask those at the county clerk, what are the responsibilities of the county treasurer, and how does the treasurer work with other county offices, such as including the county board?
Well, my duties are simply I am the holder of all funds in the county. I'm responsible for keeping the funds. I'm responsible for mailing tax bills, collecting them. That's a primary function. I'm responsible to provide a report, a detailed report every month to the county board. It's also my responsibility to work with the county clerk because they handle delinquent tax payments, redemption, so I work with them. Of course, I work with the assessor because it all plays into your tax bill. What's my assessment like? So frequently we get a question at my office that needs to go to Dan's office, the county clerk, or to the assessor. We direct them that way. My responsibility to the county board, besides my reports, is to maintain my office within the budget framework that they've provided to me.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, you've heard Mr. Africano's description of what the treasurer's office duties are. I think one of the most crucial things that the treasurer's office can do is work with all aspects of the county board, work with the finance committee, work with the county board, in just day-to-day interaction and conversations. If we have ideas, let's exchange these ideas. If they're good ideas that can actually help the people of Kankakee County, maybe there's something that need to be discussed. But I think that's one of the best attributes for the treasurer's office, is that ability to work within the framework that we are working within.
How important, Mr. Chamberlain, is it for the county treasurer and other county officials to work together in a positive and professional manner?
Well, I think if everybody in the county can work together in a positive manner, I think that just puts everybody's best foot forward. I think that is something that we have to do, because at the end of the day, what we have to remember is we're working for you. We're not working for me. We're not working for Nick. We're working for you.
To that point, I think it's a given that obviously we should have professionalism. But I'm looking out in the audience and I'm seeing our state representative, I'm seeing our sheriff, I'm seeing our county board chairman, I'm seeing several county board members, I'm seeing our state's attorney, I'm seeing our coroner. These are all people I work with almost on a daily basis. And I think one of the things I am most happy about is working with Andy Wheeler to get the office moved into the main building, because the ability for me to work next door to Dan Hendrickson and to the assessor is just unbelievable. Because what would happen in the past is someone would go to that old bank building and say, no, you need to go see the county clerk's office, and go walk across the parking lot. So I think I'm not a big fan of the word synergy, but the move has created, for lack of a better word, synergy. And I didn't want to leave out Lori in the back, because I work with Lori every day. She comes by my office to make a deposit.
Mr. Fryer, you have the question and questions to Mr. Africano.
Let's backtrack to these taxes made through the local banks. To my understanding, we do one of two ways. You can pay it directly to the bank in one chunk, or you can, many county residents, myself included, will pay their taxes in escrow through their monthly mortgage payments. Are those grouped together? And so do you run the chance of getting on the delinquent list if you're in an escrow payer? And just your personal opinion, do you think it's a wise way to pay your taxes? Should another way be explored?
Vis-a-vis escrow?
Yes.
Yeah, I think escrow for a lot of people is easy, because it's what we talked about. It's taking your taxes and chunking them into 12 pieces, right? And it's done for you. It's easy. We just started a new escrow service this year, which charged people like CoreLogic, Wells Fargo, Loretta, your big escrow payers. They pay $2 to the county for every tax, every parcel they pay. So we probably made $23,000 in additional revenue this year. What it also did was took away any duplicates, because what will happen sometimes is people who have escrowed taxes will come in and pay them, and they're being escrowed at the same time, and now you're looking at a refund. So this took that away, saved a lot of headache in the office, and made some additional revenue for the county. And so, yeah, if it were me, I would, of course, escrow.
Mr. Chamberlain.
That's currently how I pay my taxes, is my taxes are escrowed as part of my mortgage payment. But again, when it comes to paying taxes, there are certainly probably folks in this room that own their home, and that escrow is gone. So when you own your home, now that burden of whatever your tax amount is on you. And that's where I think we need to certainly take a look at multiple payments throughout the course of the year to make it easier for people to hang on to their homes.
Ms. Rabideau, you have the question, and the question is to Mr. Chamberlain.
This question comes from the audience. Do you actually have a strategic plan for the office? And if so, what are the points?
I can't honestly say that I have a strategic plan for the office because in all honesty right now, I'm still studying the office to learn as much as I can. I don't like to misspeak because Mr. Africano seems to enjoy when I do. And, certainly I can understand that, but I'm trying to gather as much information as I can. So when I come to be the treasurer of Kankakee County, I can walk into that office and put my best foot forward. One thing I can tell you that I've done as a union member every day of my working life, I will give 100 or 110% to the job that I have.
So yes, the answer to that is I do have a strategic program. I had a 2-year strategic program, and I'm working right now on finalizing a 4-year strategic program. It would include, certainly a big component of it would be cost savings and investments, because while 1.85% is not a lot, it makes a huge difference on $90 million for 30 days, as opposed to 0.7%, which was last year. So as rates now climb, there could be some great benefits for the county and the taxing bodies. I just want to clarify, I have no animosity toward Mr. Chamberlain, and I of course, think public service is a higher calling. I just would say a $300,000 union budget is a long way from $193 million.
Mr. Simone, questions to Mr. Africano.
Do you support the recent efforts for full transparency in taxing entities, such as requiring a fair disclosure of existing bond debt during any bond authorization election?
To the extent that it's possible, I think that full transparency across the board is the way to go. I work with our auditor. I have an open door policy with our auditor, Jake Lee. I have nothing to hide. I would like people to be able to see anything they would like to see. It's not my money. It's the citizens of this county's money. Full transparency is something that I'm never going to be against. So the answer is yes.
Mr. Chamberlain?
My answer would be yes.
Mr. Fryer, you have the question. The question is to Mr. Chamberlain.
Knowing that you really have no control about this, I'm going to ask the question anyway. You hear all these stories about people fleeing Illinois because of the high property taxes. You might talk to a neighbor. I'm moving to Kentland, Indiana. The taxes are a lot cheaper over there. Obviously, this is not good for us. It's eroding our tax bases and is not positive for the county. What could be done in your role and anybody's role to help stymie this trend?
Well, again, I think that lends itself to the idea that we need to offer more than one way to pay your taxes. I think we need to have 2 tax payments, 4 tax payments, 6 tax payments. But again, this is something that we have to do as a collective body. This is something that has to be looked at, it has to be researched, it has to be well thought out, and it has to be implemented properly. But I think that it is something that we do need to do for the citizens of Kankakee County, is taking a serious look at how do we make your tax burden easier for you to accept.
Mr. Africano?
I would like to say this. So I talked about when we sent out the tax bill, the $0.015 savings. What I did that for, and I don't know if anybody in this room remembers, but in your tax bill, there was a fly sheet that explained where your taxes were going. I think what's important to people in this county is, yes, we can chunk out taxes in 6 increments, 4 increments, but where's your money going? Where are your dollars going? You ought to know it, and you ought to know how to get a hold of those people. You ought to know when your school board meets. You need to know what taxing bodies are taking what percentage from your tax bill. And that information, that education is important to people. That's what I endeavor to do, to educate people. You can come and yell at me, that's fine. But I take 0.002% of your tax bill. Your local school district may take 80. So they might be your first stop.
Ms. Rabideau, you have the questions to Mr. Africano.
Talk about how you intend to improve customer service in the office, please.
Did you say, and be honest?
Please.
Oh, well, I don't know how to be anything else. I think that you understand that, number one, is that your job is to serve the people. The people are not there to serve you. My office exists to serve taxpayers. We are there for the taxpayers. They're not a burden to us. They're not a distraction. They are what we do. They are our work. Everybody deserves to be unhappy when they pay their taxes. They don't deserve to be belligerent and curse at my staff, but they certainly deserve to be unhappy. I see it every day, and I understand a lot of it. But customer service is absolutely key. If you worked in the private sector, it's mandatory, and it should be that way in the public sector, and it shouldn't be, oh, we're here, we can't go anywhere, these people have to see us. So I think it's right up with some of the most important things in my office.
Mr. Chamberlain.
I think the key thing to the treasurer's office in situations like that are education. A lot of people may come in and scream and holler about their tax bill and about simply how high the tax bill is. But as far as the taxing bodies and the people that you actually pay your taxes to, if you pay 2 increments or you pay 6 increments, the money goes to the same spot. It doesn't change. It's your ability to pay in increments that changes. The money that each tax entity gets doesn't change, and I think that's what we need to really take a look at.
Mr. Simone, you have the questions to Mr. Chamberlain.
In the past, I've heard from small vendors who have contracts with the county that there's sometimes a significant lag time in getting those contracts paid, invoices paid, 6 weeks, 3 months, 6 months sometimes. I'm wondering if you see this as a problem and how you can address that turnaround time to shorten it.
Well, I know on the opposite side of the fence, as a labor guy, I know that a lot of my contractors don't like to deal with public entities because of that. And I think what we have to realize is that there are rules in place for how bills are paid, and those rules need to be followed. Now, if those rules need to be adjusted, then certainly need to be adjusted, because in somewhere like Kankakee County, where we're talking about maybe small business, they might not survive on a 90-day or 120-day pay schedule.
Well, I don't want to misspeak on this, but I know that when I started, that we had vendors that were 120 days out. I know that's been one of the board's priorities, to get bills paid faster. I believe we're between 30 and 60 days at this point. The help that I could bring to that process was to deliver to the county their tax payment, their distribution, their first one, earlier than it ever had been given to them, or at least in recent memory. You used to have to wait till near July 1st. I think this year I provided $3 million around the 20th of May. So what that allowed everybody to do is there was a cash desert, and it took that away and allowed us to get more current on our bills. So yeah, that means a lot to me. A lot of these vendors are people I've known my whole life. So yes, I'm very, very cognizant of that.
Again, we'd like to thank the Public Library for partnership with us to host this forum. We want to thank our panel, Mr. Mike Fry, Kankakee Daily Journal, Ms. Alicia Rabideau, Political Action, and member of the NAACP, Mr. Jim Simone, representing the Hispanic Partnership, Paulette Crank, our branch secretary from the NAACP, and our candidates. And of course, you. So we're in our closing statements. We're going to give you 3 minutes in the closing statement. We're going to start with you, Mr. Africano, and closing with Mr. Chamberlain.
Well, if the people of this county decide that I've done a good job over the last 2 years and reelect me, I will go back to work for the next 4, trying to revolutionize the office in the best way I know how, and to do it with a smile on my face and goodness in my heart, and working with one of the best staffs in this county who are underpaid and overworked, but do a fabulous job. I think there are a lot of things that we can continue to fix. We've talked about a lot of them tonight. We've talked about 6 payment plans. We've talked about 4 payment plans. We've talked about internet payments, banking payments, education, very important. If I can continue to educate the public on ways that will make paying their taxes easier. But that's paying the taxes. That's not lowering the taxes. That's a whole separate issue that I think I need to be a part of that discussion as well. Taxes are high. They're not going down. And so what do we do? And I think we all need to have a discussion. I think the city of Kankakee has implemented a sales tax program, and we'll see how that works out over the next couple of years. And I think it's that kind of out-of-the-box thinking that we need to look at. It's a tough situation for a lot of people. I don't want anybody to lose their homes. The county has no interest in owning anyone's home. I don't like tax buyers. I think they're predatory. So I want to work with citizens the best way I know how to keep them in their house. Of course, I work within a statutory framework, so I'm bound by the law. So I have to do things within that framework. But I can tell you over the next 4 years, I will serve out my term. I won't do as has been done in the past, which is let my party or the county board choose a different player, which is in this office has been historically the way it went. I will serve 4 years, God willing, and my health is good. But I look forward to it. I look forward to meeting the people. I love talking to the people when they come in. I love working with my staff. I love working with all the county electeds that we have. And I think we have a great camaraderie. And I believe change is important. I believe I am the change, and I will continue to make change. Thanks. Thank you all. Thanks for coming, and thanks to the library. And Theotis, thank you to the NAACP.
Thank you. Mr. Chamberlain?
I want to start by saying thank you to the NAACP and the library for putting on this forum tonight. On November 6th, the people of Kankakee County have a choice. They have a choice for treasurer. They have a choice for Nick Africano, or they have a choice for Ray Chamberlain. I certainly hope you consider supporting Ray Chamberlain for Kankakee County Treasurer. Tonight, we've heard a lot of things. I think Nick and I have done our best to answer questions. And tonight, I'm very happy to say that one of my questions was answered. I don't think it was answered in a question or in a format that is, favorable to Mr. Africano. But a few weeks back, I heard a very nice radio advertisement by our sheriff for Mr. Africano for Kankakee County Treasurer. And Mr. Africano mentioned it again tonight, how he saved the county hundreds of thousands of dollars. When I heard that, I FOIA'd Mr. Africano last week, or at the end of our last meeting. And I asked him for documentation on how he saved the county that money and how the county realized that money. 5 days later, I got a reply from Mr. Africano saying that he had no information that he was willing to send me. But tonight, he held up a piece of paper in front of everybody here and said, here's how I did it. So how come I didn't receive that on my FOIA request?
That's kind of a legal charge.
We want to thank everyone for coming. Next Tuesday, 6 p.m., we will have a forum for the 7th and 9th candidates for the 7th and 9th state representative. Also, we're asking everyone to go out on Tuesday, November the 6th. Again, thank you. Have a great evening.